Adopted brother was jealous of my success, so he pretended to have cancer for months, made our parents spend thousands on fake medical bills. When I got accepted in medical school, he faked having a brain tumor. I need to get this out somewhere because nobody in my family believes me and I'm starting to question my own sanity. My brother Nelson, 21M, has been sabotaging my life for years, and his latest stunt might have cost me my future career as a doctor. Let me start from the beginning. I'm Daphne, 19F, and Nelson has always been the golden child in our family. Our parents adopted both of us when we were young, me at age 3 and him at age 5. From day one, Nelson made it clear that he didn't want a little sister tagging along. When I was 6, I tried to join his baseball team practice. He told the coach I had a rare condition that made me collapse randomly. The coach believed him and wouldn't let me play. When I tried to explain it wasn't true, Nelson started fake coughing and wheezing, saying the stress of lying was triggering his asthma. Our parents rushed him to the hospital. The doctors found nothing wrong, but everyone blamed me for causing his episode. This became his pattern. Every time I achieved something or wanted to participate in an activity, Nelson would either block me directly or create some medical emergency that would steal all the attention. When I won the school spelling bee at age 10, he claimed he was having severe stomach pains during my victory speech. Our parents had to leave early to take him to urgent care. They missed my moment completely. The doctors said it was probably just gas. In middle school, I started playing violin and got pretty good at it. Our music teacher selected me for a solo performance at the winter concert. I practiced for months. The night before the concert, Nelson said his chest felt tight and he couldn't breathe properly. Mom and Dad spent the entire evening in the ER with him while I sat alone, wondering if they'd even make it to my performance. They didn't. Nelson was diagnosed with anxiety and given some breathing exercises to do at home. The worst part was how he'd act completely normal when our parents weren't around. He'd smirk at me and make comments about how easy it was to get their attention. Once, when I was 13, I confronted him about faking sick to miss my tennis tournament. He laughed and said that our parents would always love him more because he needed them more. He said I was too independent and that made me boring. High school brought new challenges. I focused on my grades and started volunteering at the local hospital. I knew I wanted to become a doctor, partly because of all the time I'd spent in hospitals and medical facilities watching Nelson get checked for various fake ailments. I learned a lot about symptoms and medical procedures just from observing. I also learned how to spot when someone was exaggerating or making things up. Nelson seemed to calm down during my sophomore and junior years. He got into a decent college and moved out for most of the year. I thought maybe he'd outgrown his need to compete with me. I was wrong. Last spring, I got the news I'd been working toward for years. I was accepted into Johns Hopkins Medical School with a partial scholarship. I was over the moon. My grades, volunteer work, and MCAT scores had all paid off. When the acceptance letter arrived, I called our parents immediately. They were thrilled and started making plans for a celebration dinner. That's when Nelson struck. The day after my acceptance letter arrived, he came home from college unexpectedly. He looked terrible, pale, thin, and exhausted. He told our parents he'd been hiding something serious from them because he didn't want to worry them during finals. He said he'd been having severe headaches, vision problems, and memory issues for months. He claimed he'd finally seen a doctor at his college health center, and they were concerned about a possible brain tumor. Our parents went into full panic mode. They immediately made appointments with specialists and started researching brain tumors online. Nelson milked it for everything it was worth. He'd stumble occasionally when walking, claim he couldn't remember certain words, and squint like the light was bothering him. The celebration dinner for my medical school acceptance got postponed indefinitely. Instead, our house became a medical research center focused entirely on Nelson's supposed brain tumor. Our parents spent hours on the phone with doctors, insurance companies, and specialists. They barely acknowledged my achievement. Here's what made me suspicious from the start. Nelson had been posting photos on social media from college parties just weeks before his dramatic return home. In those photos, he looked perfectly healthy and happy. He was dancing, playing beer pong, and staying up late with friends. None of his posts mentioned headaches or vision problems. I also noticed that his symptoms seemed to get worse whenever our parents were around, but improved when they stepped out of the room. When Mom and Dad went to the grocery store one afternoon, I watched Nelson through a crack in his bedroom door. He was sitting up normally, scrolling through his phone without any apparent vision issues, and he didn't look like someone dealing with severe headaches. The medical appointments started piling up. First, Nelson saw our family doctor, who referred him to a neurologist. The neurologist ordered an MRI, which came back normal. Instead of being relieved, Nelson claimed the symptoms were getting worse. He said the headaches were now accompanied by nausea and dizziness. During this time, my own preparations for medical school got pushed to the background. I needed to complete several forms, arrange housing, and attend an orientation weekend. But every conversation with our parents got interrupted by updates about Nelson's condition or phone calls from doctors' offices. The neurologist referred Nelson to an oncologist for a second opinion. More tests were ordered. Blood work, another MRI with contrast, and something called a lumbar puncture. All the results came back normal, but Nelson insisted something was still wrong. He started researching rare brain conditions online and suggesting them to the doctors. Meanwhile, I discovered something interesting. Nelson had left his laptop open one day, and I saw his browser history. He'd been researching brain tumor symptoms extensively, not to understand his condition, but apparently to learn how to fake them better. He'd looked up things like how long headaches should last, what kind of vision problems brain tumors cause, and what symptoms doctors look for during neurological exams. I also found out he'd been lying to his college friends about being home. His social media showed he was supposedly still at school, studying for summer classes. But he was actually at home, lying in bed and acting sick whenever our parents were around. I tried to talk to our parents about my suspicions, but they shut me down immediately. They said I was being jealous and insensitive. Mom accused me of being unable to share the spotlight, even when Nelson was facing a potential life-threatening illness. Dad said I should be more supportive of my brother instead of trying to poke holes in his medical situation. Their reaction made me second-guess myself. Maybe I was being too suspicious. Maybe Nelson really was sick and I was just upset about the timing. But then something happened that confirmed my worst fears. I was helping Mom organize Nelson's medical paperwork when I found a printed email in his folder. It was supposedly from his college health center, documenting his initial complaint about headaches and vision problems. But the email address was wrong. I'd been to his college health center myself when visiting him, and I remembered their actual email format. This email was from a Gmail address made to look official. Nelson had forged the document that started this whole medical saga. I printed out a screenshot of the real health center's website showing their actual contact information. I planned to show our parents the evidence, but before I could, Nelson announced that the doctors had found something concerning in his latest tests. He said there was a small abnormality that might indicate a rare form of brain cancer. Our parents were devastated. They started researching treatment options and cancer centers. My medical school orientation weekend got canceled because they needed me to help coordinate Nelson's care. That's when I realized I had to do something drastic. I couldn't let Nelson destroy my future along with everyone else's peace of mind. I decided to conduct my own investigation to gather undeniable proof of his deception. I started by calling his college health center directly. I pretended to be calling about my own student records and casually asked about their email format and appointment procedures. The staff member confirmed that they never send medical information via Gmail and that all their official communications come from their university domain. Next, I set up a hidden camera in the living room where Nelson often lay on the couch, claiming to be too sick to move. Over 3 days, I recorded hours of footage showing him getting up normally, walking around without difficulty, and using his phone for extended periods without any apparent vision problems. I also tracked his online activity using the family computer's browser history. During the times he claimed to be experiencing severe symptoms, he was actually playing online games, watching videos, and chatting with friends. His typing speed and accuracy never showed any signs of the cognitive issues he was reporting to doctors. The final piece of evidence came from his own carelessness. He left his phone unlocked one evening while taking a shower. I found text messages between him and his college roommate where he bragged about getting out of summer classes by pretending to be sick. He wrote that our parents were paying for expensive medical tests and that he was enjoying the attention and sympathy. Most damaging was a message where he complained that I was getting too much positive attention for my medical school acceptance. He wrote that he needed to remind everyone that he was still the one who needed their love and support. He even joked about how easy it was to fool doctors by researching symptoms online. I now had concrete evidence that Nelson was faking his entire medical crisis. But I knew our parents wouldn't want to believe it. They'd invested so much time, money, and emotional energy into his supposed illness that admitting they'd been deceived would be devastating for them. I'm writing this post because I don't know what to do next. My medical school orientation is in 2 weeks, and I've already missed several important deadlines because of the chaos Nelson has created. Our parents are talking about taking out a second mortgage to pay for his experimental treatments that he doesn't even need. I have the evidence to expose him, but I'm scared of what will happen to our family when the truth comes out. At the same time, I can't let him continue destroying everyone's lives with his lies. Has anyone else dealt with a family member who fakes medical conditions for attention? How did you handle it? I'm running out of time to salvage my own future, and I don't know if I should confront Nelson directly or go straight to our parents with the evidence. Update 1: I never expected this to blow up the way it did, but I wanted to update everyone on what happened after my original post. The situation got much worse before it got better, and I learned things about my family that I wish I could forget. After reading all your comments and advice, I decided I had to act quickly. My medical school deadline was approaching, and I couldn't afford to let Nelson's fake illness derail my education any longer. I chose to confront our parents with the evidence rather than talking to Nelson first. I spent 2 days organizing everything I'd gathered. I made copies of the forged health center email, compiled screenshots of his social media activity showing him healthy and active, and edited together the most damning parts of the hidden camera footage. I also printed out the text messages I'd photographed from his phone. I asked our parents to sit down for a serious conversation. I told them I had important information about Nelson's medical situation that they needed to see. Mom immediately got defensive and said she didn't want to hear any more of my theories about Nelson faking his symptoms. Dad was more willing to listen, but I could tell he was skeptical. I started by showing them the forged email from the college health center. I explained how I'd verified the real contact information and proved that the document Nelson had provided was fake. Mom's first reaction was to say that maybe Nelson had just made a mistake about the email address or that the health center had multiple contact methods. Then I showed them the text messages. The room went completely silent as they read Nelson's own words bragging about deceiving doctors and enjoying the attention. Dad's face went pale, and Mom started shaking her head in disbelief. The hidden camera footage was what finally convinced them. Watching Nelson move around normally, use his phone without any vision problems, and show no signs of the severe headaches he'd been claiming was undeniable proof that he'd been lying. Dad stood up and walked out of the room without saying anything. Mom started crying and kept repeating that she couldn't believe Nelson would do something like this. She said she didn't understand why he would put them through so much worry and expense. We decided to confront Nelson together that evening. When he came downstairs for dinner, still acting weak and holding his head like he had a headache, our parents sat him down and showed him the evidence. His reaction was not what I expected. Instead of confessing or showing remorse, Nelson got angry. He accused me of spying on him and violating his privacy. He said I was jealous of the attention he was getting and that I'd gone too far to try to discredit him. He tried to explain away each piece of evidence. He claimed the forged email was a misunderstanding, that his text messages were taken out of context, and that the hidden camera footage showed him during brief moments when his symptoms weren't as severe. But our parents weren't buying it anymore. Dad demanded that Nelson tell them the truth about his medical condition. When Nelson continued to insist he was really sick, Mom lost her temper. She started yelling about all the money they'd spent on medical tests, all the worry they'd endured, and all the specialists who had wasted their time examining him. That's when Nelson finally broke down and admitted he'd been faking everything. But his confession made the situation even worse. He said he'd started the whole thing because he was jealous of my medical school acceptance and all the praise I'd been getting. He said our parents had always loved me more because I was more successful academically. Then he said something that shocked all of us. He claimed that our parents had always treated him differently because he wasn't their real child. He said they'd adopted both of us, but they'd always favored me because I looked more like them and was easier to parent. Our parents were devastated by this accusation. They tried to explain that they'd never treated us differently based on our adoption status, but Nelson wouldn't listen. He said years of watching me get praised for my achievements while he struggled in school had damaged his self-worth. The conversation turned into a huge argument with everyone yelling and crying. Nelson accused our parents of emotional neglect, our parents accused him of manipulation and lying, and I found myself caught in the middle of accusations flying in every direction. The worst part was when Nelson turned his anger toward me specifically. He said I'd always been the perfect daughter who made him look bad by comparison. He claimed I deliberately tried to outshine him in everything from grades to extracurricular activities to college choices. He said my decision to become a doctor was just another way of showing off and making him feel inferior. He accused me of only volunteering at hospitals to make myself look good, not because I actually cared about helping people. Some of his accusations stung because they contained tiny grains of truth. I had worked hard to excel academically, and I had chosen challenging activities and goals. But I'd never done any of it to make Nelson look bad. I'd done it for myself and because I genuinely wanted to help people through medicine. The confrontation ended with Nelson storming out of the house. He said he was going back to college and that he never wanted to see any of us again. Our parents were left sitting at the kitchen table, looking exhausted and heartbroken. Over the next few days, we tried to process what had happened. Our parents apologized to me for not believing me earlier and for letting Nelson's fake illness overshadow my medical school acceptance. They said they'd been so scared of losing him that they'd ignored the warning signs I'd tried to point out. But they were also struggling with Nelson's accusations about their parenting. They kept asking themselves if they'd really treated us differently or if they'd somehow failed him as adoptive parents. They wondered if his pattern of seeking attention through fake medical emergencies had been his way of asking for help with deeper emotional issues. Meanwhile, Nelson had returned to his college, but not to attend summer classes like he'd originally claimed. Instead, he'd moved in with some friends and was apparently spending his time partying and avoiding all contact with our family. I finally managed to attend a makeup orientation session at medical school, but the whole experience felt overshadowed by the family drama. My classmates were excited and optimistic about starting their medical education, while I was dealing with the fallout from my brother's deception. The financial impact on our family was significant. Our parents had spent thousands of dollars on medical tests, specialist appointments, and procedures that Nelson didn't need. Insurance had covered some of it, but they were still left with substantial bills for the deductible and co-pays. More troubling was the discovery that Nelson had been lying about other things too. Our parents found out he'd failed several of his college courses and was on academic probation. The summer classes he was supposed to be taking didn't exist. He'd been using his fake illness as an excuse to avoid dealing with his academic problems. They also learned that he'd been borrowing money from relatives by telling them about his brain tumor diagnosis. Several aunts and uncles had sent him cash to help with medical expenses that were completely fictional. As I'm writing this update, it's been 3 weeks since the confrontation, and Nelson still hasn't contacted our family. Our parents have tried calling him, but he's not answering their calls or responding to their messages. I'm starting medical school next week, but instead of being excited about this new chapter in my life, I'm worried about my family and wondering if we'll ever be able to repair the damage Nelson has done. The hardest part is realizing that his pattern of faking medical emergencies to get attention probably started much earlier than I'd recognized. Looking back, I can see signs that he'd been manipulating situations for years, and I wonder how many of his childhood medical scares were actually fabricated. I don't know what's going to happen next with Nelson or if our family will ever fully recover from this betrayal. But I'm determined not to let his actions derail my medical career. If anything, this experience has made me more committed to becoming a doctor and helping people who are genuinely sick. Update 2. I wish I could say things got better after my last update, but the situation with Nelson has become even more complicated. I'm 2 months into medical school now, and while I'm doing well academically, the family drama continues to affect my life in ways I didn't expect. About a month after my last post, Nelson finally contacted our parents. But instead of apologizing or trying to make amends, he called to tell them he was in the hospital with what he claimed was a real medical emergency this time. According to Nelson, he'd been having severe abdominal pain and had gone to the emergency room near his college. The doctors had supposedly found signs of appendicitis and were preparing him for surgery. He sounded genuinely scared on the phone and begged our parents to come to the hospital immediately. Our parents were torn between wanting to support him if he was really sick and being afraid that this was another manipulation. They called me at school to ask what I thought they should do. I told them I couldn't know for sure if he was lying this time, but that they should probably go check on him regardless. Mom and Dad drove the 4 hours to Nelson's college town and went straight to the hospital he'd mentioned. When they arrived, they discovered that Nelson wasn't registered as a patient. The emergency room staff had no record of anyone by his name being treated for appendicitis or any other condition. Our parents spent the next several hours trying to locate Nelson. They called his friends, checked his apartment, and even contacted campus security. Finally, one of his roommates admitted that Nelson had asked him to make the phone call pretending to be a hospital nurse if our parents tried to verify his story. They found Nelson at a local bar, perfectly healthy and apparently surprised that our parents had actually driven all the way there to check on him. When confronted, he claimed it had just been a joke to see if they still cared about him after everything that had happened. This second deception was the final straw for our parents. Dad told Nelson that he was cutting off all financial support, including tuition payments and living expenses. Mom said she couldn't trust anything Nelson said anymore and that he needed to get professional help if he wanted to have any relationship with the family in the future. Nelson's reaction was explosive. He accused our parents of abandoning him and choosing me over him. He said they were proving his point about never really loving him as much as they loved their perfect adopted daughter. He told them they were terrible parents and that he wished he'd never been adopted by them in the first place. The confrontation ended with Nelson being asked to leave the bar by the management because he was causing a scene. Our parents drove home that night, and Mom cried for most of the trip. When they got back, they shared something with me that explained a lot about Nelson's behavior. They told me that his birth parents had abandoned him when he was 4 years old, leaving him at a relative's house and never returning. He'd spent almost a year in foster care before our parents adopted him. They said the social worker had warned them that Nelson might have attachment issues and a fear of abandonment, but they thought their love and stability would help him overcome those early traumas. They wondered if his pattern of creating medical emergencies was his way of testing whether they would abandon him too. This information made me see Nelson's behavior in a different light, but it didn't excuse the damage he'd caused. Understanding why someone acts destructively doesn't make the destruction any less real. Meanwhile, the financial consequences of Nelson's lies were becoming more apparent. Our parents had to take out a loan to cover the medical bills from his fake brain tumor saga. They'd also lost money on the non-refundable deposits they'd made for his summer classes that didn't exist. Even worse, some of the relatives Nelson had borrowed money from were now demanding repayment. When they learned that his brain tumor had been fake, they wanted their money back immediately. Our parents felt obligated to repay these debts, even though they hadn't known about Nelson's lies at the time. The stress was taking a toll on their health and relationship. Mom started having trouble sleeping and lost weight from worry. Dad became withdrawn and stopped participating in activities he usually enjoyed. They started having arguments about how they should handle the Nelson situation and whether they were somehow responsible for his behavior. During my fall break, I came home to find our house felt completely different. The atmosphere was tense and sad. Our parents moved through their daily routines like they were just going through the motions. They asked about my classes and tried to show interest in my medical studies, but I could tell they were distracted by worry about Nelson. I also discovered that Nelson had been contacting other family members with new versions of his story. He'd told our grandmother that our parents had kicked him out for being sick and that he was now homeless and struggling to survive. He'd convinced one of our cousins to let him stay at their apartment by claiming our parents had become abusive. Each new lie required damage control from our parents. They had to explain the real situation to relatives who had been misinformed by Nelson. Some family members believed our parents' version of events, but others remained skeptical or thought there had to be some truth to Nelson's claims. The worst part was that Nelson seemed to be getting worse rather than better. His lies were becoming more elaborate and desperate. He'd created fake social media accounts to leave positive reviews for fake fundraising pages he'd set up for his non-existent medical treatments. He'd also started targeting my reputation directly. He created posts on social media claiming that I had always been jealous of him and had manipulated our parents into turning against him. He said I was a fake person who only cared about my own success and had never really loved him as a brother. Some of his posts included details about my medical school experience that he could only have known if he'd been monitoring my social media or getting information from someone else in the family. This made me realize that his campaign against me was more calculated than I'd initially thought. I had to make my social media accounts private and warn my medical school classmates about the situation in case Nelson tried to contact them with lies about me. It was embarrassing to have to explain that my brother was spreading false information about me, but I didn't want his lies to affect my professional reputation. The situation reached a crisis point when Nelson called our parents one night claiming that he was suicidal and planning to hurt himself. He said he couldn't live with the pain of being rejected by his family and that he was going to end his life rather than continue suffering. Our parents were terrified and immediately called emergency services in Nelson's college town. Police and paramedics were dispatched to his apartment for a wellness check. They found Nelson at a party, apparently having a good time with friends. When questioned about his suicidal threats, he claimed it had been a misunderstanding. This incident convinced our parents that Nelson needed professional intervention, but they were no longer in a position to help him get it. They'd already spent so much money dealing with the consequences of his lies that they couldn't afford to pay for private treatment. They tried to get him connected with mental health services through his college, but Nelson refused to cooperate. He insisted that he didn't need help and that our family was the problem, not him. As I'm writing this update, Nelson has been out of contact with our family for 3 weeks. We don't know where he's living or how he's supporting himself. Our parents swing between worrying about his safety and being angry about his continued manipulation. I'm doing well in medical school, but the constant family drama is exhausting. I've had to learn to compartmentalize my emotions so that I can focus on my studies during the day and deal with family stress in the evenings. The experience has also affected my relationships with my classmates. It's hard to participate in normal social activities when I'm constantly worried about what Nelson might do next or how his actions might impact my family. I never imagined that my brother's fake illness would lead to this level of ongoing chaos. What started as jealousy over my medical school acceptance has turned into a pattern of increasingly dangerous and destructive behavior that shows no signs of stopping. Update 3. This will be my final update on the Nelson situation. It's been 6 months since my last post, and I've finally reached the point where I need to focus on my own life and future rather than constantly dealing with my brother's chaos. The turning point came 3 months ago when Nelson made a decision that crossed a line I couldn't forgive. He contacted the administration at my medical school directly and filed a formal complaint against me. In his complaint, Nelson claimed that I had a history of mental health issues and had made threats against family members. He provided what appeared to be documentation of my supposedly unstable behavior, including fake text messages and manipulated photos that made it look like I had been violent or threatening. He also claimed that I had gained admission to medical school through fraudulent means, specifically by lying about my volunteer work and exaggerating my qualifications. He suggested that the school should investigate my background more thoroughly before allowing me to continue in the program. The medical school administration took his complaint seriously, as they should have. They called me in for a meeting and presented me with Nelson's allegations. I was shocked by the detail and sophistication of his lies. He had clearly spent considerable time creating fake evidence to support his claims. Fortunately, I had learned from our previous experiences with his deceptions. I'd kept copies of all the evidence I'd gathered about his fake brain tumor, including the text messages where he admitted to lying and bragged about fooling our family. I was also able to provide real documentation of my volunteer work, including letters of recommendation from the hospital supervisors I'd worked with and photos from events I'd participated in. The contrast between my legitimate records and Nelson's fabricated evidence was clear. The school's investigation took 2 weeks, during which I was suspended from classes. Those were the most stressful 2 weeks of my life. I'd worked so hard to get into medical school, and the possibility that Nelson's lies might destroy my career was terrifying. In the end, the administration concluded that Nelson's complaint was fraudulent and that I had been targeted by someone with a personal vendetta against me. They apologized for the disruption and allowed me to return to classes without any penalties. But the experience changed something fundamental in how I viewed my relationship with Nelson. Up until that point, I'd still held on to some hope that he might eventually get help and that our family might find a way to heal. His attempt to destroy my medical career showed me that he was willing to go to any lengths to hurt me, even if it meant ruining my future. I made the decision to go completely no contact with Nelson. I blocked him on all social media platforms, changed my phone number, and asked our parents not to share any information about my life with him. I also informed my medical school's security office about the situation in case he tried to contact them again. Our parents supported my decision, though it was difficult for them. They'd also reached their limit with Nelson's behavior, especially after learning about his attempt to sabotage my medical education. They told him that he was no longer welcome in their home and that they wouldn't provide any financial or emotional support until he got professional help. Nelson's response was to escalate his attacks on the entire family. He started a blog where he posted detailed accounts of what he claimed was our family's dysfunction. He painted himself as the victim of adoptive parents who had emotionally abused him and a sister who had bullied him his entire life. The blog gained some followers, particularly people who had their own difficult relationships with family members. Nelson used their sympathy and support to fuel his narrative that he was the wrong party in our family's conflicts. He also began reaching out to our extended family members with increasingly wild stories about our parents and me. He told some relatives that our parents had physically abused him as a child. He told others that I had stolen money from him to pay for medical school. Most of our family members saw through his lies, especially after our parents shared the evidence of his previous deceptions. But some relatives were more susceptible to his manipulation, particularly those who didn't know our family well. The final straw came when Nelson contacted my medical school's local newspaper and tried to get them to run a story about his allegations against me. He presented himself as a whistleblower exposing corruption in medical school admissions. The journalist who contacted me was professional and thorough. She asked for my side of the story and seemed interested in the evidence I provided about Nelson's pattern of lying. But I realized that even having to defend myself against his accusations in a public forum was giving him more power to disrupt my life. I consulted with a lawyer about whether I had grounds for a restraining order or could take legal action against Nelson for harassment. The lawyer said that while Nelson's behavior was clearly harassing, proving damages in court would be difficult since most of his lies had been exposed before they caused significant harm. Instead of pursuing legal action, I decided to take a different approach. I wrote a detailed letter to Nelson explaining exactly how his behavior had affected our family and me personally. I didn't threaten him or try to make him feel guilty. I simply laid out the facts about the damage he'd caused and told him that I was removing myself from his life permanently. In the letter, I acknowledged that his childhood trauma might have contributed to his behavior, but I explained that understanding his motivations didn't make his actions acceptable. I told him that I hoped he would eventually get the help he needed, but that I couldn't continue to be a target for his destructive impulses. I sent the letter through a third party so that Nelson couldn't contact me directly to respond. I also made it clear that any attempts to communicate with me, my school, or my future colleagues would be considered harassment. Since sending that letter 4 months ago, Nelson has been mostly quiet. He still maintains his blog, but he stopped creating new content about our family. He hasn't tried to contact my medical school or interfere with my education. Our parents have occasional updates about his life through mutual acquaintances, but they don't share those details with me unless there's a safety concern. From what I understand, he's been moving frequently and hasn't maintained steady employment or relationships. As for me, I'm thriving in medical school. My grades are excellent, and I'm developing good relationships with my classmates and professors. I've been able to focus on my studies without the constant distraction of Nelson's drama. I've also learned valuable lessons about setting boundaries and protecting myself from manipulative people. The experience with Nelson has made me more aware of red flags in relationships and more confident in my ability to handle difficult situations. Our parents are doing better too, though they still carry some sadness about losing their relationship with Nelson. They've started attending a support group for parents of adult children with mental health issues. They say it's helpful to talk with other people who understand their situation. They've also become more intentional about building a positive relationship with me that isn't defined by Nelson's chaos. We have regular phone calls where we talk about my studies, their work, and normal family topics without any mention of Nelson or his problems. Looking back on this entire experience, I can see how Nelson's pattern of faking medical emergencies was just one part of a larger issue with manipulation and attention-seeking behavior. His jealousy over my medical school acceptance was the catalyst, but his problems ran much deeper than sibling rivalry. I don't know if Nelson will ever get the help he needs or if our family will ever be able to have a healthy relationship with him. But I've accepted that I can't control his choices or fix his problems. All I can do is protect myself and build the life I want. Medical school is challenging, but it's also incredibly rewarding. I'm learning how to help people who are genuinely sick and suffering, which feels like a meaningful way to honor the pain that Nelson's fake illnesses caused our family. I'm also planning to specialize in psychiatry, partly because of my experience with Nelson. I want to understand mental health conditions better and help people who are struggling with the kinds of issues that might have contributed to his behavior. This has been a difficult chapter in my life, but I'm grateful for the strength and resilience I've developed through dealing with it. I'm also grateful for the support of my parents, friends, classmates, and everyone who responded to my original posts with advice and encouragement. To anyone else dealing with a family member who lies or manipulates for attention, my advice is to trust your instincts, document everything, and don't be afraid to set firm boundaries to protect yourself. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, but you can prevent them from destroying your own life in the process. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. I revealed my ex-wife's infidelity to her new husband after she humiliated me at our son's birthday party. Now my life is in chaos and everyone hates me. I'm Mark, 28M, and I'm in a complicated situation with my ex-wife Kathy, 27F, and her new husband Jonathan, 32M. Kathy and I have known each other since high school. We met during freshman year when we were both part of the school's debate team. At first, we were just friends, but as we spent more time together preparing for debates, we started to develop feelings for each other. We officially started dating in our sophomore year. I remember asking her out after we won a big debate competition. We went to a local diner to celebrate, and I nervously asked her if she wanted to be my girlfriend. She said yes, and from that moment on, we were inseparable. Our relationship continued through high school and into college. We both got into the same university, which seemed like fate at the time. We studied different majors. I was in business, and Kathy was in psychology, but we always made time for each other. We'd study together in the library, go on weekend trips, and plan our future together. After graduation, we got married in a small ceremony. Our families and close friends attended. It was a beautiful day, and at the time, it felt like the natural next step in our relationship. We had been together for so long, and everyone expected us to get married. But looking back, we were far too young and unprepared for marriage. The first few months of our marriage were okay. We moved into a small apartment together and started our first jobs. But soon, the cracks started to show. We began arguing about everything: money, household chores, our careers, even what to watch on TV. It was like we suddenly couldn't agree on anything. Our marriage only lasted a year. The constant fighting became too much for me to handle. I felt like I was losing myself in all the arguments. One night, after a particularly bad fight about something trivial, I think it was about who forgot to buy milk, I told Kathy I wanted a divorce. I expected her to fight back, to try and convince me to stay, but she didn't. She just nodded and said, "If that's what you want." I think her pride stopped her from arguing. But then, during the divorce proceedings, we found out Kathy was pregnant. This changed everything. We both wanted to be parents, and for a moment, I considered staying in the marriage for the baby's sake. But deep down, I knew that wouldn't be fair to any of us. I still felt we shouldn't stay married. Kathy wanted to cancel the divorce and work things out. She argued that we should give our marriage another chance for our child. But I was set on leaving. I suggested shared custody and co-parenting, living close to each other initially for the baby's sake. Kathy wasn't happy about this arrangement. She believed that a child needed both parents in the same home. We had many heated discussions about this, but eventually, she agreed to my terms. Looking back, I realize now that I got married because I thought it was what I was supposed to do, not because I felt ready. Kathy had been talking about marriage since our second year of college. She would point out engagement rings in store windows and talk about her dream wedding. I didn't feel emotionally ready for such a big commitment, but I didn't want to break her heart or risk losing her. So I went through with it, even though deep down, I wanted to make a life of my own before settling down. After a year of marriage, I knew it wasn't working. The person I saw myself becoming in that marriage wasn't someone I liked. I was constantly irritated, always on edge, and I felt like I was losing my identity. When we found out about the baby, I felt even more strongly that we should separate. I didn't think it was right to bring a child into an unhappy marriage. I believed that we could be better parents if we were happy separately rather than miserable together. Kathy thought we should stay together for the baby's sake. She came from a family where her parents had stayed in an unhappy marriage for the kids, and she seemed to think that was the right thing to do. But I had seen how that affected her growing up, and I didn't want that for our child. It was hard, but I eventually convinced Kathy to agree to my terms. We got divorced but stayed in touch for our son. We set up a system where our son spends half the month with each of us. I try to be there for him as much as possible, and so does Kathy. I can't say Kathy and I are friends. She still has a lot of anger towards me, which I understand. I still care for her. After all, we have a long history together, but I know we couldn't have been happy together long term. Our personalities and life goals were just too different. I was there for her during the pregnancy and birth, even staying with her for a few days after our son was born to help out. I wanted to show her that even though our marriage was over, I was committed to being a good father and co-parent. Despite this, Kathy told everyone that I had abandoned her when she needed me most. She painted me as the villain in our story, telling our friends and family that I had left her alone and pregnant. Most of my friends stopped speaking to me because of what she said. Some of them sent me angry messages, calling me selfish and irresponsible. I didn't confront her about these lies. I felt guilty about marrying her when I wasn't ready, about not being honest about my feelings from the start. I accepted the social backlash as my punishment for my mistakes. Strangely, Kathy was always nice to me in person when we met for handovers of our son. It felt like she might want to get back together, even though she was spreading lies about me to others. It was confusing and frustrating. Sometimes, she would hint at giving our relationship another try, but then I would hear from mutual friends about how she was bad-mouthing me to them. I decided to focus on my work and our son instead of trying to figure out Kathy's mixed signals. I threw myself into my career, working long hours to advance in my company. When I wasn't working, I devoted my time to my son, trying to be the best father I could be despite the complicated situation with his mother. About a year after our divorce, Kathy started dating again. I found out through social media posts and comments from mutual friends. It hurt to see her moving on, even though I knew our relationship was over. But I didn't say anything because I wanted her to be happy. She deserved to find someone who could give her what I couldn't. She made a big deal about her dates on social media, posting pictures and status updates about her newfound happiness. It felt like she was trying to provoke a reaction from me. When I didn't react, she told me directly that she was dating. I told her I was fine with it, which seemed to disappoint her. I think she was hoping I would be jealous or upset. Then, one rainy evening when Kathy came to pick up our son, I invited her to stay until the rain stopped. It was a gesture of politeness, nothing more. But as we waited, we got talking, reminiscing about old times. We remembered the good parts of our relationship, our first date, our college adventures, the day our son was born. One thing led to another, and we ended up sleeping together. The next morning, I woke up feeling confused and guilty. But Kathy was already gone, and she had taken our son with her. She left a message saying it was a mistake and she didn't want to get back together. I was hurt but tried to accept it as a one-time thing, a moment of weakness for both of us. After that incident, I started distancing myself from Kathy even more. I only talked to her about our son, keeping our conversations brief and to the point. She tried to get back on good terms several times, inviting me for coffee or suggesting we take our son out together, but I rejected her attempts. I felt like I needed clear boundaries to avoid any more complicated situations. Then Kathy started dating Jonathan. I knew him as the older brother of a mutual friend from school. He seemed like a good guy, successful, kind, and stable. I was happy for Kathy. It looked like she had found someone who could give her the kind of relationship she wanted. Our interactions decreased even more after that, which was fine with me as I was trying to move on with my own life. I focused on my career and on being a good father to our son. I even started going on a few dates myself, though nothing serious came of them. But a few weeks before Kathy's wedding to Jonathan, she showed up at my apartment late at night. I was surprised to see her there, especially so late. When I opened the door, she was crying. She said she missed me and had made a huge mistake. She confessed that everything she'd done over the past couple of years, the dating, the social media posts, even her relationship with Jonathan, was all to try to get me back. I was shocked by her confession. Part of me was angry that she had manipulated the situation for so long, but another part of me still cared for her. In a moment of weakness, we ended up sleeping together again. The next morning, Kathy was crying again, but for a different reason. She said she loved Jonathan and was just scared about getting married. She begged me to keep what happened between us a secret, saying that sleeping with me had made her realize she really did love Jonathan. I agreed not to tell anyone, feeling used and disappointed. Kathy and Jonathan got married, and I tried to move on. I dated a bit more seriously, even having a relationship that lasted a few months, but it didn't work out. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still entangled in my past with Kathy. Recently, at our son's birthday party, things took a turn. Kathy invited me to the party, suggesting we have one celebration instead of separate ones like usual. I agreed, thinking it would be good for our son to see us getting along. I showed up after work, a bit late due to heavy traffic. As soon as I arrived, Kathy started making jokes at my expense. She commented on how I was late because I put work over everything else, a clear jab at our divorce. Then she started making fun of my receding hairline, something I've been self-conscious about. Jonathan joined in, suggesting I take time off work to actually live life because I had made some pretty bad life choices. I was shocked by their behavior, especially in front of our son and the other guests at the party. When I asked them to elaborate, they listed reasons they thought I had screwed up my life, including my divorce from Kathy and prioritizing work. They seemed to take pleasure in pointing out what they saw as my failures. I was hurt and angry. I couldn't believe Kathy would say these things, given our history and the secret we shared. And I was disappointed in Jonathan for joining in, especially since I had always tried to be respectful of their relationship despite what had happened. Feeling cornered and upset, I did something I'm not proud of. I wrote a note on my son's birthday present. I still know your secret and I know you don't want anybody else to learn about it, so watch your words around me. Then I left the party, not even saying goodbye to my son. The next morning, Kathy called me crying. She apologized for what she'd said, explaining she was upset because I was late and our son had been asking for me. She begged me not to reveal her secret, saying it would ruin her marriage and hurt our son. But I've realized that I've been letting Kathy manipulate me for too long. Her behavior at the party, followed by her tearful apology, made me see how she's been playing with my emotions for years. I'm considering telling Jonathan the truth about what happened before their wedding. I don't want to live with this secret anymore, and I think Jonathan deserves to know the truth about his wife. So, Reddit, Wibta, if I told my ex-wife's husband the truth about her infidelity? Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since my son's birthday party, and a lot has happened. I've been thinking hard about what to do, replaying events in my mind and considering the potential consequences of my actions. After much deliberation, I made a decision. I told Jonathan the truth. I sent him a detailed message explaining everything that happened between Kathy and me before their wedding. I included the date it happened, the circumstances leading up to it, and Kathy's behavior afterwards. I also included proof of Kathy being at my place that night, a security camera screenshot from my apartment building showing her entering late at night and leaving early in the morning. After sending the message, I blocked both Jonathan and Kathy. I know it might seem cowardly, but I needed some space to process everything. I know I'll have to see Kathy eventually when I pick up our son, but for now, I don't want to deal with either of them. I also told everyone I know to keep Kathy out of our conversations. Some friends and family members have been trying to ask me about what's going on, but I've been deflecting their questions. I did what I had to do, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. I shared my side of the story and spoke my truth. I'm done with that chapter of my life. As of now, I haven't received any messages or threats. I'm guessing they haven't told people yet, but I'm mentally prepared for when the news does come out. I know it's going to be messy, and I'm likely to lose some friends over this. But I feel like it's a price I have to pay for my peace of mind. I know some people might think I did this out of jealousy or to get Kathy back, but that's not true. I did it to get rid of my own guilt. Maybe it was Kathy's fault for cheating, but it was my mistake too for going along with it. I want to be a good father, and to do that, I need to be a good person first. Living with this secret was eating away at me, affecting my relationships and my self-esteem. The only person I feel sorry for in this situation is Jonathan. He's a nice guy who didn't deserve any of this. But at least now he knows the truth and can make his own decisions. I hope he finds the strength to do what's best for him, whatever that might be. I've been reflecting on my past choices too. I made a mistake marrying Kathy when I wasn't ready. We were both young and immature, and neither of us was prepared for marriage. Having a child together complicated things even more. I wonder how different our lives would have been if we had waited a few years before getting married, or if we had been honest with each other about our doubts. I've also been thinking about how I handled our divorce and co-parenting situation. While I stand by my decision to end our marriage, I wonder if I could have communicated better or been more supportive during the transition. Maybe if I had been more clear about my feelings and boundaries from the start, we could have avoided some of the drama that followed. This whole situation has made me realize that I need to work on myself. I want to be a better person, not just for my son, but for myself too. I'm considering taking some time off work to focus on personal growth and spending more time with my son. I've realized that I've been using work as an escape from my personal problems, and that's not healthy for me or for my relationship with my son. I'm also planning to be more honest in my relationships going forward. Keeping secrets and avoiding confrontation has only led to more problems. It's time for me to face things head on and communicate more openly. This includes being honest with my son, in an age-appropriate way, about what's going on between his mother and me. As for Kathy, I hope she takes this as a wake-up call too. We both made mistakes, and we both need to do better for the sake of our son. I'm not interested in rekindling our relationship, but I do hope we can eventually find a way to co-parent more effectively. Right now, that seems like a distant possibility, but I have to believe that we can get there for our son's sake. For now, I'm focusing on my son and myself. I've arranged for him to stay with me for the next few weeks while things settle down. I want to make sure he feels loved and secure during this turbulent time. We've been doing a lot of fun activities together, playing games, watching movies, going to the park. I'm trying to create a sense of normalcy for him amidst all this chaos. I know there will be fallout from my decision to tell Jonathan the truth. Kathy's family and friends might come after me, and I might lose some more friends. But I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I'm ready to face it with a clear conscience. I've learned a lot from this experience, and I'm determined to do better moving forward. I want to be someone my son can look up to, someone who stands by their principles even when it's difficult. I know the road ahead won't be easy. There will be tough conversations, awkward encounters, and probably some heated arguments. But I'm prepared for that. I'm done running from my problems or sweeping them under the rug. It's time to face everything head on. To anyone out there in a similar situation, wondering whether to reveal a difficult truth, I say this: think carefully about your motivations and the potential consequences. But also consider the cost of keeping secrets. Sometimes, the short-term pain of telling the truth is worth the long-term peace it brings. Update 2: It's been a month since I told Jonathan the truth, and as expected, all hell broke loose. The news of Kathy and Jonathan's divorce has spread like wildfire. Just as I predicted, Kathy's family and friends have been attacking me nonstop. My phone has been blowing up with messages calling me a homewrecker, a sociopath, and worse. They're convinced I did this because I want Kathy for myself. But they couldn't be more wrong. I did this to free myself from the burden of guilt and lies. I'm not interested in getting back together with Kathy. Our relationship has been toxic for years, and I'm finally ready to break free from it completely. Jonathan reached out to me last week. It was a difficult conversation, but I'm glad we had it. He thanked me for telling him the truth, even though it was painful. He said he had suspicions about Kathy's fidelity but never had concrete proof. He's hurt and angry, but he's grateful to know the truth before they started a family together. Kathy, on the other hand, is furious. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, yelling and crying. She accused me of ruining her life and said she'd never forgive me. I remained calm and told her that she ruined her own life by cheating and lying. I also reminded her that she had plenty of opportunities to come clean to Jonathan herself. The hardest part of all this has been explaining the situation to our son. He's confused and upset about why Uncle Jonathan isn't around anymore and why Mommy and Daddy are fighting again. We've tried to shield him from most of the drama, but kids are perceptive. He knows something is wrong. Kathy and I had a long, difficult conversation about how to handle co-parenting moving forward. We've agreed to keep our interactions strictly about our son and to never badmouth each other in front of him. It's going to be challenging, but it's necessary for our son's well-being. I've also had to deal with the fallout among our mutual friends. Some have sided with Kathy, believing her version of events. Others have stood by me, appreciating my honesty. A few have chosen to distance themselves from both of us, not wanting to get involved in the drama. Through all of this, I've stuck to my decision to focus on personal growth. I've started reading self-help books and practicing mindfulness. I'm learning to set better boundaries and communicate more effectively. It's not easy, but I'm already seeing positive changes in my life. I've also been spending more quality time with my son. We've been going on weekend adventures, playing games, and just talking. I want him to know that no matter what happens between his mother and me, he is loved and supported. As for my relationship with Kathy, it's at an all-time low. We're barely speaking beyond what's necessary for our son. Part of me feels sad about this, given our long history together. But another part feels relieved. The constant drama and manipulation are finally over. I know the road ahead won't be easy. There will be more challenges as we navigate this new reality. But for the first time in years, I feel like I'm on the right path. I'm no longer living a lie or carrying the weight of someone else's secrets. To those who are in similar situations, wondering whether to reveal a difficult truth, I say this: it won't be easy, but the peace of mind is worth it. Living with integrity, even when it's painful, is better than living with guilt and lies. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm ready to face it head on, with honesty and integrity. It's time to write a new chapter in my life, one where I'm true to myself and those around me. Update 3: It's been half a year since everything blew up, and life has finally started to settle into a new normal. Kathy and Jonathan's divorce was finalized last month. It wasn't pretty, but it's done. Kathy has moved to a different part of town, which has made our co-parenting arrangement more challenging, but we're making it work. Our son is doing better now. We've both been putting in extra effort to make sure he feels secure and loved. He's in therapy to help him process all the changes, and it seems to be helping. He still asks about Jonathan sometimes, which is hard, but we're honest with him in an age-appropriate way. Kathy and I have established a strictly business-like relationship when it comes to our son. We communicate through a co-parenting app to keep things organized and avoid unnecessary conflict. It's not ideal, but it's functional. I've stuck to my personal growth plan. I've been seeing a therapist regularly, which has been incredibly helpful in processing everything that's happened and working on my issues. I've also joined a support group for divorced parents, which has given me a safe space to share my experiences and learn from others. Work-wise, I did end up taking some time off. I used it to reconnect with myself and my son. When I returned, I had a frank discussion with my boss about achieving a better work-life balance. Surprisingly, they were very understanding and supportive. As for my social life, things have improved. I've reconnected with some old friends who reached out after hearing about everything that happened. I've also made some new friends through my support group. It's nice to have people around who understand what I've been through. Kathy's family eventually stopped harassing me. I think they finally realized that their anger was misdirected. A few of them even apologized for their behavior. I appreciated their apologies, but I'm keeping my distance for now. Jonathan and I have had a few more conversations. He's doing better, focusing on his career and spending time with friends. He thanked me again for telling him the truth, saying it allowed him to make informed decisions about his life. As for Kathy, last I heard, she's also in therapy. I hope she's working on herself and her issues. Despite everything, I do want her to be happy and healthy, if only for our son's sake. Looking back, I don't regret my decision to tell the truth. It was difficult and messy, but it was the right thing to do. I'm proud of myself for finally standing up and refusing to be manipulated any longer. This experience has taught me a lot about the importance of honesty, integrity, and self-respect. It's also shown me the value of setting boundaries and the strength it takes to stick to them. I'm not naive enough to think that everything will be smooth sailing from here on out. Co-parenting with Kathy will always be challenging, and I'm sure there will be more hurdles to overcome. But I feel equipped to handle whatever comes my way.